Hey, Nanan. My name is Nicole Cox. I am one of your classmates, and I chose your response to respond to just because it did strike a little bit of a nerve with me. And maybe not so much of a nerve, but maybe a chord, something that I'm passionate about. I know that you mentioned that you were a mother and you're also a um, and you were talking about the barriers, why you don't get referrals from school counselors. And I'm a high school counselor, so I thought that I might could throw out some barriers to you. Um, so um, I guess I was very much like you. When we look at our at risk kids at school, most of them are identified in the same ways that you mentioned. Either they are hospitalized, so they're inpatient, and we find out about it after the fact, or they are diagnosed or sent through the ER, and we don't know about it until they're already there and on their way to their next facility or hospitalization. The police reports, as you mentioned, a lot of times we'll get notified by our local law enforcement that something's going on, or after a kid makes an attempt. I feel like at the school level, a lot of times we are reactive instead of being proactive. And I'm sure you feel that way quite a bit too, being a therapist. Um, but some of the barriers that I see from a high school counselor perspective, probably why you don't get referrals like you probably think you should. Um, a lot of times, kids tend to be misidentified or not identified at all. And that's just because I know exactly where I am. I am only one of two guidance counselors, and at the high school, we serve about 910 kids. So our student to staff ratio is not where it should be. So I think that we have to rely on our teachers to help us identify those kids. And sometimes they don't have the background or the knowledge to know some of the warning signs or the risk factors that they need to be looking for. Those signs and symptoms that would be a little bit more easy to notice for us because of what we do. But they're in the classroom teaching, and they may be teaching history and not really recognizing what might be going on with a kid. So I think the lack of training of our staff is a big issue. Where I live, I know financial is a concern. We live in a very rural community, so a lot of our families don't have the financial backing, for transportation or the cost to therapy. Another thing that I see as a barrier is just the general stigma that is attached to mental health. That's a huge barrier. Families and students are embarrassed that they might have a diagnosis that they can't do anything about. Um, and that kind of falls into the lack of family support. If the families are not supportive or not willing to try to get the help for the kid, then those kids, tend to go lacking or without. Um, Another thing that we have a problem with in our area is just the number of resources that are available. I don't think, as a school counselor, I don't think that we have the number of therapists or doctors available to meet the needs that we have within grades 9 through 12 in my area. Um, we only have like two mobile crisis services in our area, and they tend to be full quite a bit or busy. I'm backlogged just because we don't have the number of personnel eligible or available to meet the needs of our kids. And the next thing that I think would be an issue would be our educational programs that we either have in the schools or in the communities. um, there's just not anything there. So I think that is another barrier that, even our parents need to be aware of what's going on, our coaches of our ball teams, the dance instructors, they need to know how to recognize these warning signs too. So again, like I said, I think it goes back to schools being very reactive, and we're not being proactive. And so I think one of the things that we need to push for is a sustainable program to educate the staff within our schools to know how to recognize the signs and symptoms, but also our kids being able to identify those things in their classmates so that when there is a concern that they can make those referrals to the adults in the building to make sure that those kids are being looked after. Um, so anyway, I hope that I named a few barriers for you, and I hope that maybe you can use this in some of your qualitative research within this class. But if you have any questions, I'd love to talk to you, so you can just respond and we can chat back and forth. Thanks so much.